Hi there. Welcome back to Reddit Confessions. She walked in humming a song I didn't recognize. I remember thinking, who even hums when they walk through the door at 7:43 p.m.? On a Thursday, she tossed her bag on the chair like it had never seen the floor of a hotel room. Her hair still smelled like the complimentary shampoo they give you in places with rooftop pools and cocktail menus printed on recycled paper. And she smiled. God. She smiled like someone who had nothing to hide. The kind of smile you wear when you think the game is still going your way. But the game ended 3 days ago, and she hadn't read the scoreboard yet. I was already sitting at the kitchen table. Just sitting. Not doing anything dramatic. No candlelit intervention. No quiet jazz in the background. Just me and a cheap envelope I bought at the corner store next to the bus stop where I once waited for her in the rain. She saw it right away. The envelope. White, slightly creased, addressed to no one, but perfectly loud in its silence. She laughed. Did I miss your birthday or something? No answer. Wait. Is this a joke? She added, stepping closer, her smile slipping just a bit. Curtis. Still nothing. Because what do you say when the person you trusted most walks in glowing from a girl's trip? While your heart is still recovering from what the photos showed you on Tuesday, what do you say when her vacation tan can't hide the lie printed in her itinerary? What do you say when your wife, Marlene, posts beach photos with cocktail emojis, but forgets her location settings are still on? You don't say anything. You just watch. You watch her step closer to the envelope like it might bite her. You watch her breathing shift. You watch her realize that maybe, just maybe, you're not as blind as she thought you were. Can we talk? She whispered. It was the first honest thing she'd said in weeks. But I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because the letter inside that envelope had already said everything I ever needed to. And the truth? It wasn't even written by me. The envelope stayed where it was, untouched on the table between us like a loaded weapon neither of us was brave enough to pick up. She didn't even sit down. She just stood there with her hands clasped together like a nervous bridesmaid, trying to remember a speech she never wrote. Her lips parted, then closed again. I could almost see her scanning memories like files in a cabinet, looking for what she thought I knew, trying to calculate what version of the truth I had read. She didn't know I had the whole thing. 3 nights ago, I was lying alone in our bed, staring at the ceiling, when her tablet dinged with a notification. She'd forgotten to sign out of her work messages, or maybe she assumed I wouldn't be the kind of guy to look. But I did, and I wish to God I hadn't. The message preview said, "Tell him we did sunrise yoga. I'll text you after he goes to work." I clicked it open, thinking maybe it was nothing. But it was everything. There were photos. Not scandalous ones, just subtle, ugly proof. A wine glass held between 2 hands that weren't hers. A reflection in a hotel window. A voice memo. A joke that only makes sense if you've shared a bed with someone. I didn't confront her then. Couldn't. My stomach was twisted. My heart pounding so loud I thought the neighbors could hear it. I just saved it all, printed it, and stuffed it in the envelope. Because if I tried to speak, I'd crack. And I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of watching me fall apart in real time. Back in the kitchen, she finally reached out, brushing her fingers against the corner of the envelope like she thought it might vanish if she touched it softly enough. "Curtis, I don't know what you think you know," she said, but her voice had that quiver. The one people get when they're not afraid of being wrong, but of being caught. I laughed, not because anything was funny, but because I had rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times, and somehow I still didn't feel ready for it. "Was sunrise yoga that good?" I asked. Her face dropped. She knew exactly what I meant. She pulled out a chair and sat down slowly, exhaling like she was about to tell me she had crashed the car or burned the roast. Not that she'd lied for months about who she really was. "It wasn't like that," she started. "Nolan, he's just someone I talked to. I needed space. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore." That's the moment it hit me. She'd made herself the victim in a story where I was the one left clutching receipts. "You didn't talk to me because you were too busy rehearsing what to say to him," I muttered. I should have yelled. I should have stormed out or smashed something like they do in the movies. But all I did was grip the edge of the chair and blink back the sting in my eyes. "I never planned for it to happen," she whispered. "But she did. Of course she did. She packed for that trip knowing. She kissed me goodbye with that plan already in motion. She smiled in photos while I fed the cat and folded her laundry. I told her I needed air and walked outside, barefoot, into the night. The grass was damp. My feet were freezing. I stood in our tiny backyard under that old tree she once said she wanted to hang fairy lights on. We never got around to it. That night, she slept in the guest room. I know because I heard her breathing through the wall. And at 3:28 a.m., I heard her whisper a name in her sleep. It wasn't mine. I don't know what made me stay awake after hearing her say it. Maybe it was the sheer absurdity of the moment. Lying in a bed that still smelled like her hair, listening through a drywall barrier while my wife, the same woman who once cried over rom-coms, softly exhaled Nolan like it was a lullaby. Or maybe it was because I realized I hadn't slept properly in weeks and that the insomnia wasn't random. It was survival. My body had been trying to warn me, screaming that something was wrong long before I was willing to admit it. I sat there in the dark, gripping the pillow like it owed me answers. Nolan, the guy she told me was too spiritual for her taste. The one with the ocean tattoos and Instagram quotes about healing your inner child. The one she swore she barely knew. That same name had slipped out of her subconscious and floated across the hallway like poison gas. She didn't even know she said it. But I did. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, buttered toast, even asked if I wanted the usual. As if routine could duct tape over the wreckage. I didn't answer. I couldn't look at her hands as they moved across the kitchen counter, knowing those same hands had been wrapped around lies and another man's promises just days ago. She sat down across from me, sliding the mug toward me like we were still pretending. "Curtis," she started softly, "I want to talk about last night." I said nothing. My eyes were on the window behind her, but my ears were fixed to every syllable. "I know I hurt you. I know what you found was bad, and I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't real. But I didn't do it to destroy us. I did it because I was starting to feel invisible. Invisible." The word landed like a slap. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell, "You felt invisible? I've been wallpaper in this marriage for over a year." But instead, I stared at the mug. The stupid mug that said, "Good morning, handsome." The one she gave me 3 Christmases ago. It was chipped now. Fitting. She continued talking, but all I heard was noise. Excuses. She said she never meant to fall for him, that it started with long conversations during a work retreat, that he listened in a way she hadn't felt in years, that he told her things she didn't know she needed to hear. And somewhere in her ramble, she said the most quietly devastating sentence I've ever heard in my life. "He made me feel like someone wanted me again." I stood up, not angrily, just slowly, like my body had reached its limit of sitting still and absorbing betrayal. I walked to the living room without saying a word and opened the drawer where I'd stashed the second envelope. She didn't know there was a second one. The first was the bait, the test. The second was the evidence. I handed it to her. She looked confused at first, then terrified. Inside were screenshots, not just hers, his too. His messages, his voice notes, his pictures. One of them was of the two of them standing by a hotel window, her in a robe, him shirtless behind her. The reflection in the glass caught more truth than she ever intended to share. Another one was just her hand, resting on his chest, captioned, "Wish we could stay like this forever." I didn't yell. I just said, "So, was that before or after the sunrise yoga?" Her lips trembled. Her hands dropped to her lap. And for the first time since she returned from that trip, Marlene, the woman who once promised me forever, finally had nothing to say. But the silence? It wasn't peace. It was the beginning of something much, much darker. I think what people don't understand about betrayal is that it doesn't hit you all at once. Trickles in, like a leak in your ceiling. You see the first drip and you think you can manage it. You tell yourself you'll patch it, fix it, move on. But by the time the water stains the floor, it's already rotted the beams above your head. That's how it felt watching her sit on the couch, clutching the envelope like it was radioactive. Like if she held it too tightly, the whole thing would explode. She didn't cry. That's what scared me the most. Marlene always cried. Commercials, weddings, burnt toast. She cried over everything. But now, not even a tear. Just silence. A heavy, haunting kind that pressed on the air like a thunderstorm waiting to break. I didn't know what to do, so I left the room. I went upstairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now, I guess, and shut the door. I didn't lock it. I didn't need to. She didn't follow me. I sat at the edge of the bed and opened my phone. Not to scroll, not to distract myself, but to open the last file I had saved. It was a scan. A hotel receipt. Not one she left behind, of course. No, she was far too careful for that. It was sent to me anonymously, through a burner email I almost deleted because I thought it was spam. The subject line was just, "You deserve the truth." And there it was, a bill for a 3-night stay at the Belmont Suites in Sarasota. 1 king bed. Champagne upgrade. Spa credit. 2 guests. Checked in under her name, with Nolan listed as a +1 in the digital notes. The worst part? The dates matched her girls' trip perfectly. She didn't even bother staggering it. She just repackaged her affair as a self-care getaway. And I bought it. I even helped zip her suitcase. I stared at that receipt for a long time, and somewhere between the spa charges and the in-room breakfast for 2, I felt something in me shut off. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Something colder. Like watching a movie that's too far gone to fix, so you stop rooting for the characters and just wait for the credits to roll. I went back downstairs. She was still there, in the same position, like the couch had become quicksand. The envelope sat beside her, open now, its contents scattered across the coffee table like fragments of someone else's life. "You said he listened to you," I said, voice dry. She looked up, slowly. "He did. So did I replied. "You just stopped hearing me." Her lips parted, but no words came out. I didn't wait. I walked past her and into the kitchen, opened the drawer, pulled out the only thing of hers that was still untouched by all this. A Polaroid from our first anniversary. We were on the porch of a tiny cabin in Asheville. She had just burned the eggs that morning and we were laughing. That kind of laugh that makes your ribs hurt. I looked at the photo. My hand shook, but I didn't cry. Then I flipped it over. There, in her handwriting from 9 years ago, were the words, "Let's never lie to each other. Not ever." I pinned it to the fridge, right next to her grocery list. Then I turned and walked out of the house without my keys, my phone, or even shoes. I walked for blocks, through streets I didn't recognize, past homes with warm yellow lights and dogs barking behind fences. And somewhere, far from the sound of her voice or the smell of her perfume, I realized something awful. This wasn't just about Nolan. This wasn't just about cheating. This was about being erased. One choice at a time. One night at a time. One lie at a time. Until there was nothing left of me in the version of her life she'd been living. And as I walked back home, barefoot and exhausted, I had no plan, no comeback, no dramatic gesture. Just one thought circling over and over in my mind. She never forgot about me. She just stopped choosing me. When I came back that night, the house felt colder. Not in temperature, but in presence. Like the walls had absorbed everything that happened and now wanted no part of either of us. The lights were still on. The envelope and its scattered contents were gone from the table. Marlene was in the kitchen, not cooking, not even pretending to. She was just standing there, staring at the floor, barefoot like I had been hours earlier, as if walking through this betrayal had somehow leveled the playing field. She didn't say a word as I entered. I moved past her and poured myself a glass of water, hands trembling slightly, not from anger anymore, but from the sheer exhaustion of keeping it together. I wasn't even sure what together meant anymore. Finally, she spoke. "I told my mom." I blinked, slowly turning toward her. "You told your mom, what?" "That I messed up. That I stepped outside the marriage." Stepped outside. Like it was a stroll. Like our vows were a porch and Nolan was just the sidewalk. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because none of them felt like enough. She went on. She told me to fix it, to be honest, to take responsibility. That's a first, I muttered. Her mom never liked me. Always said I was too soft for someone like Marlene. She used to joke I was more houseplant than husband, low maintenance, always there, and easy to forget about. Marlene flinched at that. I didn't mean for it to go this far, Curtis. I laughed. You checked into a resort under your name with another man. Booked massages, ordered champagne, took selfies, and slept beside him for 3 nights. That's not something you accidentally fall into. She didn't argue. That scared me more than anything. Her silence was heavier than her excuses. I walked back into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch. She followed. She stood across from me like she was about to give a TED Talk on self-inflicted heartache. I know you want me to leave, she said. I looked up. I don't know what I want, which was the truth. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want some dramatic scene. I didn't even want her to hurt the way I was hurting. I just wanted my life back. The version of it where I didn't question everything. Her words, her expressions, the reasons she stayed late at work. I wanted to go back to the version of me who believed that when she said, I love you, she meant only me. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. I don't want to stay in this house if you can't look at me, she said, her voice cracking for the first time. I can't breathe in this silence, Curtis. It's killing me. You spent 3 nights breathing just fine, I said coldly. That broke her. Her face twisted, not in anger but in guilt. She sat down on the floor instead of the couch, pulling her knees to her chest like a kid in trouble. I didn't even like him, she whispered. Then why him? I asked, and she gave me the most twisted, honest answer I've ever heard in my life. Because he saw me as someone I'm not, someone exciting, desired, free. He didn't know about our mortgage, my missed dental appointment, or how I cry when my jeans don't fit. He didn't know the real me, and I liked that. I stared at her. I didn't even blink. So you wanted to be wanted by someone who didn't know you. She nodded slowly, eyes wet. You know what's funny, Marlene? I said. I do know you. I know all of that. I know your dental phobia, your midnight insecurities, your favorite frozen pizza, and how you hate the sound of clocks ticking. I know the version of you that isn't polished or filtered or curated for someone new. And I still chose you, every single day. That's when she started crying. Real tears. But it was too late. Not because I hated her, but because I couldn't unlearn the truth. I couldn't unsee the photos. I couldn't forget the name she whispered in her sleep. And worst of all, I couldn't forget the moment she looked at me holding that envelope and chose silence over the truth. So I stood up, walked to the hallway closet, pulled out the overnight bag we used when visiting her sister, and calmly said, I think you should stay somewhere else tonight. She didn't argue. She just nodded and stood, still barefoot, still broken. As she packed in silence, I sat on the porch, watching the sky dim, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. And somewhere between that fading light and the slam of the car door, I finally accepted it. Marlene's version of our marriage had already ended. Mine was just catching up. The silence after she left wasn't peaceful. It wasn't the cinematic kind where you sip tea and rediscover your independence while the sun sets behind you in warm colors. No, it was the kind that crawled under your skin, made the walls creak louder, and turned every sound into a reminder that someone who used to share your breath was now somewhere else, breathing beside someone new or crying in a guest room across town. I didn't sleep that night, not even close. I just lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling, counting each minute on the digital clock. At 2:07 a.m., I stood up and walked to the room she used as a home office. It still smelled like her perfume, like jasmine and almond, a scent I once associated with comfort. Now it made my chest ache. I didn't go in there to snoop. That's what I told myself. But the truth was, part of me still didn't believe it was real. Some naive, pathetic piece of me needed to see something, anything, that proved she wasn't all bad, that maybe she had planned to end the affair, that maybe she felt guilty, That maybe she had written something in a journal that said she still loved me. Ridiculous, I know. But I opened the drawer anyway. Inside were some notebooks, her old planner, and a half-zipped travel pouch she hadn't unpacked from the trip. I stared at it for a full minute before reaching in. My hands were shaking, again. There was a receipt from the resort. I already knew about that. There was a bracelet I'd never seen before, with tiny wooden beads and a small metal tag that read, "Breathe, baby." And then, at the very bottom of the bag, was a folded piece of notebook paper, torn, the edges frayed, her handwriting small and tight. My breath caught before I even unfolded it. It wasn't a letter to me. It was to him, Nolan. It started with, "I wish I could say this to your face, but I know I'll lose my nerve." My hands went cold. She wrote about how she felt alive with him, how every moment together was an escape. She mentioned how she used to replay his voice memos over and over while pretending to watch Netflix with me. She confessed that she almost told me the truth during our anniversary dinner, our 9th, but chickened out when I gave her that new scarf she didn't deserve. But the worst part? She ended the letter with, "If I leave him, I need to know you'll be there. Say the word. I'm yours." There was no signature, just a lipstick kiss at the bottom, smeared slightly like she folded it before it dried. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just folded it back up and placed it exactly where I found it. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I wanted her to know that I knew, that the game was over, that I'd seen it all. And then, almost stupidly, I did the thing that shocked even me. I sat down, opened my laptop, and searched Nolan's name. He wasn't hard to find. He'd tagged himself at the Belmont Suites. Public post. Poetic caption. "Sometimes the universe gives you a weekend you'll never forget." The comments were filled with heart emojis and vague replies from friends. But one comment stood out. "Does she know you still talk to Alyssa?" I clicked the profile of the girl who posted it, scrolled a bit, and suddenly the universe that was crushing me cracked wide open. Because Nolan wasn't single. He wasn't waiting for Marlene. And Alyssa wasn't just some jealous ex. She was his fiancée. And judging by her latest post, a photo of her engagement ring and a quote about starting over after betrayal, it looked like she had just found out too, which meant Marlene had been lied to as well. The woman who burned down our marriage for a fantasy? She was someone else's affair partner. The next morning started like any other, but felt like the morning after a house fire. The walls were standing, but nothing inside was the same. Marlene still hadn't come home, and I didn't reach out. Not out of strength, but because I didn't know what version of myself would answer if she did. I walked around the house like a ghost, opening drawers and closing them again without a reason. I checked the fridge just to close it. Everything around me still belonged to both of us, and yet none of it felt like it belonged to anyone anymore. The letter to Nolan haunted me. Her words haunted me. But what haunted me most was how far she'd been willing to go for someone who never intended to catch her. She threw herself off the cliff of our marriage, thinking there was a net waiting, and now I knew the truth. He never planned to be there at all. By noon, I did something stupid. I picked up her notebook again. Not the one she used for work, but the private one, the one she kept under the stack of yoga magazines. I wasn't even sure why. Maybe I hoped to find a confession. Something raw, something redeeming. But what I found was worse. There were dozens of entries. Most of them were ramblings about how trapped she felt, how dull I had become, how predictable our life was. One line stopped me cold. "Sometimes I think Curtis loves me because I'm the only thing in his life that doesn't leave. If he knew the real me, he'd walk away too." She wrote that before the affair, before Nolan. So maybe this was never about him. I didn't know what to do with that. I just closed the notebook, placed it back exactly as I found it, and tried to swallow the lump in my throat. There's something deeply humiliating about realizing the person you love doesn't just betray you. They convince themselves you wouldn't survive knowing who they really are. An hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but something in my gut told me to. "Is this Curtis?" The voice on the other end was calm, measured, female. "Yes. Who's this?" There was a pause. Then, "My name's Alyssa. I think you and I need to talk." My heart stopped. I stood in the kitchen like someone had just whispered a secret through the walls. "I'm Nolan's fiancé." Or, I didn't speak. My mouth went dry. She continued, "I found your name on a receipt. Marlene's. I've been putting the pieces together. I thought I was going crazy, but then I found your number on a shared contact sheet he kept from their work event. I didn't know if I should call, but you should," I said. "I'm glad you did." She exhaled. "Okay, wow. Okay. I've been trying to get him to admit it for weeks. He kept denying there was anything going on. Said she was just dramatic. But then he got sloppy. He left his messages open when he went to the gym. She wrote to him, 'Your wife.' I saw it. I leaned against the wall, heart pounding. She said she was willing to leave you for him. She said she was already halfway packed. And he never replied. That hit harder than anything I'd read in her letters. She was willing to torch our life for a man who ghosted her once she became inconvenient." Alyssa continued, "I thought maybe I was being cruel, digging around, but after what I found, I thought maybe you deserved to know everything too." I thanked her. We talked for 15 more minutes. Not to trade revenge stories, we weren't that type of broken. We just wanted to confirm the madness. To hear someone else say, "Yes, it really happened. You're not imagining it." Before she hung up, she said something I'll never forget. "You were collateral, Curtis. So was I. They don't think about the wreckage they leave behind. They just keep driving." When the call ended, I sat on the edge of the couch for a long time, staring at the blank TV screen. She had been willing to leave me for him, and he had already left her. Two people, dancing in the dark, never realizing they were each other's dead end. But now I had a new question. If Marlene came home now, would she tell me everything? Or would she still lie, even with the fire burning around her? I didn't have to wait long to find out, because at 6:23 p.m. her car pulled into the driveway. She was back, and I was done pretending. She didn't knock. She just stepped in like she always used to, carrying the same canvas weekender bag she'd left with. Her eyes searched the room nervously, as if she expected me to be gone. When she saw me sitting on the couch, arms folded, expression unreadable, her shoulders sank in visible relief, or maybe dread. Couldn't tell which. "I didn't know if you'd let me back in," she said softly. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence sit between us, but this time, it wasn't full of venom. It was full of choice, a decision that hadn't yet been made. She placed her bag down, didn't move closer, didn't assume she could. That alone showed me something had shifted. And then, to my surprise, and maybe hers too, she said something I'd been waiting weeks to hear. "I lied. I betrayed you. I risked everything because I didn't think you'd notice or care, but you did. And I don't deserve another chance. I know that, but I'm standing here, not to ask you to forget it, just to show you I finally remembered who I used to be. And that woman did love you, Curtis. She still does." I didn't cry, but something loosened in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something gentler, an understanding that maybe we were both hurting in ways neither of us had admitted. That love, even when broken, doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it changes shape. I told her everything, about the letter, about Alyssa, about Nolan's lies, and she listened, fully. No defenses, no excuses, just a woman sitting on the floor, in the wreckage of the life she'd almost thrown away, nodding as if every word was another brick she had to carry to rebuild something worth living in. We didn't solve everything that night. We didn't promise forever. But we talked, honestly, for hours. She told me she ended it with Nolan before she even found out about Alyssa. That his silence scared her more than my confrontation ever did. That her guilt had swallowed her the moment I held up the envelope and didn't scream, because she knew I was the better person in the story. That was the night we started over. Not with grand declarations or some perfect cinematic hug, but with a cup of tea. With her curled on one side of the couch, and me on the other. with a quiet kind of peace that only comes when two people stop hiding from each other and themselves. Months have passed since that night. We're in therapy now. We don't call ourselves healed, and we don't pretend it never happened. But there's something honest about where we are. I see her again, the real her, and she sees me, not the wallpaper version she thought I was, but the man who stayed, who chose to stay not out of weakness, but out of strength. Because forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to move forward while remembering so you never go back. And that's the hardest, bravest thing I've ever done. Thanks for watching this story here on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever been in a moment like this, where trust was broken but healing was still possible, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What's one choice you made that changed everything? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real, emotional confessions that dig deep. We'll see you in the next story.